Excuse me. I'm all right, and then I'm a bit like a Pringle. Once I cough, I can't stop. AM Live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Failcast F1 podcast in its, I was going to say centennial year. That's not quite
that
right.
old.
But sometimes it feels like it, and I feel like it a little bit today. My name is Balkenberg, and alongside me, as always, is our taco friend extraordinaire, Mr. Definitely Zero. How are you doing, Esteban?
Pip Pip, I'm having the best time. This is like the golden age of my life. I was saying earlier today, it's the only downer is watching all my extrovert friends like mentally unravel as the days go by. But like this is just the life I was living anyway. I've been dying for an excuse to just stay at home the whole time, eating snacks, playing games. I've also become a Renaissance man. Like I'm learning languages, I'm working out for the first time in years. I read a book briefly. Like all kinds of craziness is happening. How are you handling life in quarantine?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. I have to say, even though I have been told to self-isolate for 7 days, I've just done my normal life. I don't feel like I've done anything different. Hello, Random Aussie in the chat. He says, hello, Random Man and Smithy. So thank you. The Random all the way round.
Oh, Random Man's a much better name than Definitely Zero. I should have fucking taken that.
Damn it. Definitely Random. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's all been fine. I think what will throw me out slightly more, and I know my other half was having a meltdown over it, we seem to live our life entirely around going out to eat, which I feel as a man as fat like me is quite a good priority, but they've now shut all the restaurants, so I was like, it's okay, they still do takeaway, but that doesn't seem to have hit home with everyone yet.
They're doing like isolation takeaway delivery here now.
Yes,
where you order and then like, they just drop it at the door, and of course in a city full of like 5 million people it will stay there for all of 2 seconds if you're not immediately there to get it.
yeah, no, the same thing here. So last week when that was all being decided, random side note, in my day job I work in the central government with benefit systems and stuff. We had a meeting with the head of Deliveroo to see whether they went through different avenues of what they could do to keep running their business because everyone's self-employed. And so we knew that they were thinking about doing that the day before they announced it. So I feel like I had privileged, need-to-know information.
And what, you like stocked up on curries beforehand?
Yeah, exactly. Running out, doing stuff.
Tell you what, though, we are in many ways example setters, and that remains true today. Because as was pointed out to us before we went live, we've been friends for like 11, 12 years, and we've never been in a room together. So no. that is superb social isolation skills that I think a lot of people could learn from.
I wish I could be that distant socially with most of my family instead.
I also have super exciting news because today's beverage, right, is something incredibly rare, at least here in Germany. It is rarer than a toilet paper in a Catholic brothel. I am drinking full sugar vanilla Coke.
No.
Yeah, like for months now, all you can see is the sugar removed bullshit, and it's like, life's hard enough, man. Why? It's so rare. I thought maybe they'd put the opium back in it. Oh, right. I'm quite good round the Hungaroring, but I've had an absolutely dire fucking season so far.
Yeah,
and you are more than double my points tally. This is another year that you're going to win.
Ooh, I don't know. I'm not so great. You're better at the Hungaroring than me, I think historically as well, and I'm not great round here this time. I'm still smarting from last race where the AI swerved across the track to take me out when I should have won that. Damn it.
Yeah, I remember Beetlejuice's comment. Just, hello, emergency. I'd like to report a murder
and a robbery all at the same time, please. Hello, Mano. Welcome to the chat. I hope you're well. We are doing this all early, by the way, because we know that the F1 channel is rerunning the 2016 Brazilian Grand Prix, and then after that, the race is running an esports series, and F1 is now running an esports series as well tomorrow. Although last I spoke with my F1 contacts, they're still deciding where the Williams team can actually host and run the actual series and like broadcast it. So this reminds me exactly of when you have sim racing leagues and at the last minute the cameraman drops out and you're like, no! And it's just hilarious that the actual real F1 has just had exactly the same problem because I've been reading the chat.
Last year Paddy Lowe ballsed up the car launch and now they can't even launch a stream. Hey there, Wojo Age. George, I butchered your name there, mate. I apologise, but welcome. It's very good to have you with us. Yeah, well, there's simultaneously a lot and not a lot to talk about at all. I mean, I was as heartbroken as everybody else about the cancellation of the Aussie Grand Prix because I'd been itching to get going. I'd binged watched Drive to Survive Season 2. I'd kicked the ever-loving crap out of the F1 TV archives. And I was raring to go, particularly because it looks like an incredibly hard season to call in the midfield, and I really wanted to see how it was going to pan out. But now we're going to have to make do with video game racing, at least for a few months more. I was initially tantalised by the idea of us having a season opener in Monaco, but now Monaco is cancelled because Prince Albert has got sick. So apologies.
Oh, is that why? I didn't actually know the reason why.
I suspected so because I saw the announcement of the cancellation like the day after.
Yeah. Well, I suppose there's only about 10 people that live, 22 drivers that live in Monte Carlo anyway, so him plus the Prince Albert, they've probably just had a complete lockdown.
We have a question coming in about if we're going to be streaming the F1 sim racing series ourselves, actually. Are you going to watch it?
Possibly, out of mild curiosity. So the thing with the F1 series is it's not the esports one. And apparently, insider info, there has been a massive row over how slow F1 has been to react with this like mini series, and they've said that so there was basically a row of why don't we just have the normal esports series with 22 nobodies, and then the other half of the grid were like, no, we need to have at least one car with a real race driver in, otherwise no one will care. So it's kind of like the sim racing purists versus we need to put on some entertainment for the F1 fans plus. I'm not quite sure where I sit on it because having watched the races stuff last week, the sim racing crew absolutely trounced all over the real F1ers. Just because it's a different thing. I was going to
bring that up.
So I will watch it probably for morbid curiosity at the beginning. And then just like I did with the race, I think I'll go, well, that was interesting, and I might not come back to it. How about you?
I don't know. I was considering it, but at the same time, there's something remarkably less impressive about watching someone like Max Verstappen or Lando Norris doing something that you can do. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, everyone thinks they can sit in an F1 car and push the pedal and steer the wheel, but it's really not like that. And anyone who's gone go-karting while being fat, which I've done, knows how hard it actually is physically.
Yes.
And it's really... I can't stress how damaging I think it is, actually, to have a mixed grid like that, because nothing makes you look worse than being sort of... You've reached the top 20 drivers in the world, and then you just get beaten by some fat bloke in a chair.
Completely agree.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't want to see people doing something that I do all the time and find reasonably easy. I mean, you know, there are definitely far better sim racers than me, far better, but I mean, I can do it to a competent enough level that it's sort of like, well, what do you do?
No, completely agree. I think just to bounce off of that, and it's one of the things that kind of annoyed me right at the very beginning of sim racing, when there was like, sim racing is going to be really, really popular. I used to commentate for what used to be called PSR TV, but they now are completely owned by iRacing. and do all of the iRacing broadcasts. And it was right at the very beginning when a couple of real race drivers used to get on board. And the very first one that we done had Connor Daly and Lucas de Grassi in. Lucas de Grassi span on the formation lap and crashed over the start-finish line when the lights went out. And Connor Daly was in the wall by lap 6 after 3 pit stops and 3 nose cone changes. And it was embarrassing enough that the director was like, just focus on everyone else but them. And it was because this isn't their sport, this isn't their domain. The whole thing was, we've got real racing drivers in, but it was such a poor show because they turned up 20 minutes beforehand. They didn't know what they were getting themselves into. We were broadcasted through the Canadian Grand Prix paddock. And from what I hear, it was a very, lol show because of how, it just isn't thought of properly in that circle. Now, times have changed over the years, but you still got that offset. This is our domain. This is what people spend all night, all day looking at. As you'll know, with people from Formula Simracing and GPVWC, you get home from work, they're on an open server until about 10 or 11 at night, tweaking setups all day long. They don't just jump in at the last minute, and they don't cross games very often either. So, yeah, it's a difficult one. And I don't think it does any big star any good to be part of that and be trounced. I think it should just stay as the esports, and you keep them separate but laud them both.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, and actually, Chat agrees as well. My new friend, whose name I can't pronounce,
hey friend,
agrees. We do need to have real drivers, but ones which have online experience, such as Verstappen and Norris. Yeah, definitely. Although I have to say, I did see Lando Norris punt Max Verstappen into a wall while bump drafting in a GT race. So. They're not, neither of them are exactly the king right now. I messed up my lap rather badly, and I need to go again, I would think, but I might give it another minute so I can continue to have thoughts from my brain. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't be so harsh and just shut the idea down straight away, but... Oh, age. See, that's easier. We can call you age. That's much... Oh. See, if we'd opened with this, I wouldn't have embarrassed myself 4 times, but I suppose that's part of the show.
Failing again.
The Failcast. So, well, there is a fair bit on the news agenda. Now, I just want to take a moment to give a shout out to all the F1 teams for their commendable efforts to start building ventilator machines for hospitals. That's totally badass, and it's definitely the sort of thing they should be doing. What I want to talk to you about, Simon, and good people of chat, the denizens of chat, the change to the F1 schedule, obviously not totally finalised, but moving the shutdown, the summer shutdown, to sometime around now and allowing teams to take it voluntarily over the next few weeks, eliminating the summer break. And I have very mixed feelings on this, and I want to hear your opinions, because part of me feels happy that we're going to get some more races and they're going to do their best to give us a season as possible. But at the same time, knowing a few people who work in F1, I know how important the summer break is. And I do kind of feel it's asking a lot of the teams and the crews to be travelling all around. Now, some of it has been offset, at least from the team standpoint, with the delay of the new car regulations and what looks like an insistence on this year's cars being used 2 seasons in a row, which is another topic I want to get onto because I can't tell if I've got a bee in my bonnet about that or not. But let's start with the elective shutdown and the scrapping of the summer break. Please do lay your thoughts upon me.
I think it will be challenging. Initially, I thought, yeah, that makes sense. Then I thought, but what happens if throughout your entire summer break you're actually in lockdown / isolation, as we both are, and it's just, I feel like you're allowed. They've basically said be ill during this time period, so that we can then be up and running again later on. Plus, and I'm not sure I sit quite nicely with that. I think still having maybe a fortnight shutdown later on in the year would be useful, and I think it would probably be really useful to do it in between some of like the triple headers that are being mooted around, because that would be well worth it, if obviously we are still in a position where you can do all this international travel at that point, which I think is still very up in the air.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised I'm managing to sit down right now with EasyJet's fist so far up my backside. But
what a thought.
Yeah. Oh, those orange bastards. Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started. Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to see how the season's actually going to play out. The main thing for me is that obviously everyone needs to be healthy, and there needs to be a sensible plan for the sport going forwards. The show does have to go on at some point, but it's key to make sure it goes on at the right time in the right context. So, I don't want to bash too much what F1's doing, except their response to Australia, which I thought was stupid, to make the decision after flying everyone out there and doing all the press conferences and everything. It's like, right, everyone, fly to the other side of the world, and then just, stand close to each other, maybe touch each other on the arm a bit, show some affection, bond a little, and then we'll send you home without doing any racing.
After sharing the microphone with each other on a broadcast. I was looking at that going, no! I could just see, Chase Carey's moustache get, you could see the germs jumping off onto it, being like, woohoo, we're home! It
makes me sad to see such a magnificent walrus-like moustache receive such blatant disrespect, but that's the world we live in now, a world of moral degeneracy.
As opposed to Ellen DeGeneres.
So, skipping on to the regs, because that's the big topic for me, for qualifying at least.
All right.
What are your thoughts on this recycling cars? Now, obviously there is some precedent in this. Ferrari had done it before now. In the 90s, as I recall, or the early 2000s, didn't they use last year's car for a few races? And I know Force India have done it in more recent memory.
2005.
My issue is with the whole grid doing it and it being mandated by the rules. Because all it guarantees is that... that's true, McLaren as well. Well spotted, Age. The only thing it guarantees is that the running order stays pretty much the same. I mean, yes, teams will probably be more inclined to develop their car over the year because, it literally all transfers over one-to-one. But still, the only team I've seen so far who seem to be indicating they'll take a risk in that regard is McLaren, because they've announced this morning that they will not delay their switch from Renault to Mercedes Power.
Which really was a key thing for me, because they're the only team that have got a contractual issue, which if they're going to go ahead with, because I was like, does that then mandate that they need to switch over to Mercedes in 2022? But if not, and they're still going to go ahead with it, that's interesting, because that means that they will have to think about how they deal with that in the future, which will cost them money and potentially no one else. It's interesting times.
I mean, I don't know, honestly, the difference in how those power units are packaged. I don't know what the implications are for the design of the car, but I guess they obviously think they can make it work, and presumably you would expect to see a performance gain surely from the change. Did Honda already sign with Red Bull for after 2021?
No.
Do you know? That's a little unclear, isn't it?
I don't think they have yet.
No, I don't think they have either. There were some talks ongoing, and both sides seem sort of halfway there and halfway not, don't they? The whole Aston Martin thing kind of threw a spanner in the works for a while, and I always thought Honda took it with quite good grace that you barely see the word Honda on the car, and it's called Aston Martin Red Bull Racing. But now it seems like just as Honda start to come good, there's more pressure for them to pull out, which seems a little weird. F1 really need to step up here actually and make sure there's some kind of incentive. I don't know if a delay of the rule changes helps at all, because it's not really a power unit change, is it? It's just aero, I thought.
Yeah, no, it is. But if it's the aero that then changes everything, and you need to kind of know where everyone sits on everything.
That was a brave line you took there.
I was just thinking that myself. No, I've got to go again. I've got no dares to do it. I am going to be in trouble.
I accidentally put it on pole. Didn't even realise I'd done it.
Well done.
I was so busy being witty and insightful and intelligent and entertaining and handsome and modest that I didn't even realise that I just put it on pole. That's where we are now.
Ooh, I think I'm going to be in trouble.
I mean, to be honest, I can...
Yeah.
Oh, mate. You make me sad.
I do indeed. Someone's got to fail each week.
Oh, damn you, Max Verstappen, beating me.
This car is very oversteery.
I think you'll make it through, though.
Oh, mind you, I'm behind Russell, so if Russell doesn't improve, then I think I'll be alright. Since he seems to be in Q3 every fucking weekend. There's a couple of other things that popped into my head around this, and it's much more less around the regulation side of stuff, but more around what you said about incentives. And it's the fact that last time we had something that was going to hit something on a global scale was 2008. What happened then? Every man and his wife pulled out. And so something around incentives to make sure, especially where you've got Honda and potentially Renault, I think, are the other ones that are most likely to do a whoopsie. What happens when it's not financially viable for them to stick around? How do you keep them in, especially if a sport doesn't quote-unquote run properly at the moment? So I think there's interesting times. So for me, I'd want to get them committed and on board as quickly as possible to ensure that stability and that flow of cash going back and forth.
You brought up a very good point there that I hadn't considered yet, but it is a good point. I mean, honestly, I'm a little unsure as to why Renault turned up at all, let alone why they went completely mental in the news a few days ago and announced they were looking at signing Sebastian Vettel. I was waiting for the line in the interview where Cyril, a bit of babool, said, and it was at this point I woke up drenched in sweat, my wife asking what was wrong. But it never came. Like, I honestly thought he was describing a dream.
A fever dream.
He genuinely was labouring under the presumption that he was going to sign Sebastian Vettel. But setting Renault aside for a moment, because it's very expensive for them to embarrass themselves right now. Mm-hmm. The extension of the regulations for another year does have one potential positive, which I think it may give Haas a temporary reprieve from the remorseless swing of Gene's scythe. Because his big complaint, aside from not being able to win, which shows he didn't understand F1 when he entered it, is that the new regulations were going to be excessively expensive, even though they were designed with the idea of cost saving in the long term.
Yep.
I forgot to press the brake button.
It's literally the first time we've seen you all stream.
I like to put on a show. Because honestly, I really do get the feeling this season will probably be Haas's last until this happened. And now they have a car that meets the regs for next year, depending on the requirements of the Concord Agreement. Because I don't know if they race next year, if that commits them, in theory, to racing longer. Because we're due a new Concord Agreement, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the question now. Like, is it is it enough to keep them in, and maybe they can develop the car to a position he feels a bit more happier with. I always saw it as being a short-term project for Haas anyway, and sort of the season they had last year was the one I predicted for them from the start. They just proved me wrong for a few years. It's kind of hard. Those guys and Renault, those are the ones that worry me most. Yeah. Because I honestly could see them both going at the same time. The only difference, in my opinion, now is whether that same time is this year or next year. And also, like, it begs the question: if Renault seriously want to sign Sebastian Vettel, setting aside how ludicrous that is for a moment.
Yeah.
Although, interestingly, Vettel hasn't distanced himself from a midfield drive all that strongly. What does that mean? Is that a straight swap for Ricciardo? I mean, I thought Ferrari now were sniffing around signs. It's all very confusing. I mean, it's the silliest season that we've had for a little while at least.
Yeah, because so many contracts are coming up to an end. You could pretty much play, like, spin the bottle and work out where someone could potentially go. One of the things that came out of Australia that I wasn't aware of, I always thought you had to have 16 cars on the grid for it to be classed as a real F1 race. But that has, over the years, maybe as the grid has shrunk, now that is down to 12. So even if Renault and Haas did go, F1 could actually still put on... well, they could have... in my own head as well, but it puts them right on the bubble. They can still go around putting on an F1 championship. I'd be really upset if there was just 12 fucking cars on the grid.
It wouldn't be fucking worth watching.
No.
I mean, it's 2 cars away from points for everybody.
Yeah, and then you might as well just do IndyCar and just go, oh, screw it then, everyone in.
Caution.
Yeah. I'm a big... I still struggle... Well, I don't struggle with 20, but I still feel that 20 is like the bare minimum that I could get excitable over. And I really visually notice when I go and watch older seasons when there's 22, 24, 26 on the grid. And when you've got... I appreciate it's a different category, Formula 3, and they've got 30 cars on the grid... that might be a bit too excessive, but it did enough look visually a spectacle. So I don't think I'd be excited with 12 cars. And then thinking about this season as well, apparently we only need to have 8 races for it to be declared an actual official season. So there was also talk of basically splitting the 21 and 20 seasons, kind of, but not annually, and maybe rolling it all into one gigantic one and spread the races out. Don't know quite how that would work, but it could be that actually they do like a 2021 season and like squeeze 8 races together over like the winter, and then do like a shorter 2021 season for the summer. And again, that could justify Haas and Renault sticking around with the same machinery for 2 years, even though it's kind of all combined in together. Hello, people that are just joining, by the way. I just noticed we've got quite a few people in. I didn't notice.
Age has raised another point, which is something we've actually talked about before, and a suggestion we made, I think, 2 years ago. The engines of the current Formula are somewhat fully developed. Couldn't F1 buy them stock to give to private teams, basically encourage private entrants, like the Cosworth engines before? Simon and I had long thought, actually, that F1 should be paying Cosworth or Judd or someone to develop essentially an alternative power unit, like a stock, cheaper power unit, just to allow more entrants on the grid. But maybe there's feasibility issues. I don't really know what the implications for the sport would be if that happened. I mean, I've long resisted the standardisation of parts.
Oh, fuck it.
That's the same corner again, and just as I jump on board with you...
I'll go for that curb, that's the problem.
Yeah, this game has taught me now, like this version of the game has taught me to be allergic to the inside curb as far as I'm able.
I do think that there is an FIA team, almost like a junior-y team, so that you've always got the progression, so that you don't have a Sven de Vries where there is nowhere in F1 for the F2 champion to go. And that they end up in Formula E for better or for worse. It should be that you have the option to progress up into that junior category thing. And one of the interesting little projects that I had last weekend was I tried out putting F3 and F1 cars from the Project Cars 2 game in the same race at the same track, and how would multiple formulas work. Because the big thing about that is that obviously the FIA's like sanction stuff would be baselined, and there wouldn't be, I'd assuming, a budget to improve anything. And so they're going to always be like a mid to back team, but at least you've got somewhere to grow the talent, your Minardi, so to speak. And I think that would work quite well. It'd create
that's what the sport is missing, though. It really is missing, like the Minardis and the latter day Tyrrells and so on that are willing to take on either new prospects in exchange for a bit of backing. Occasionally they resort to pay drivers, but isn't MotoGP like that with B teams? I believe they are, aren't they? MotoGP, they have they have a much better progression ladder, I think, in motorcycle racing all round, to be honest. But also, it seems to be a much cheaper sport in general. But yeah, I mean, I'm keen to see actually how Formula E develops this. Yeah, because there is no like junior Formula E category yet. They're still using the same ladder as F1, which is kind of good because it gives those single seat trained drivers somewhere else to go. But electric cars are very different to ICE powered machines, and I'm sort of surprised that there's not like a junior category yet, another place to develop the technology.
Because you've only got the Jaguar I-Pace, is it? That goes around as a support race, and from what I've seen from that grid, you've got about 4 or 5 drivers who are capable, and then a couple at the back who aren't, but kind of just making sure that it hits like 10 on the track. So I know every sport needs to grow somewhere, but it feels a little bit bare bones at the moment. So no, if they was able to do something like that, all the better. The other thing that I'll throw it out there for it to be blazoned in flames. If they don't have anything electric to go for, then put on some remote control car racing. I'd be quite intrigued with that, especially after listening to the F1 Beyond the Grid with Pedro de la Rosa, where he started out with remote control cars and then moved into actual real racing because his dad told him that he doesn't want him to be a real race car driver because he'll kill himself.
That's some strange advice. Did you mean that he'd get like broken, depressed, and kill himself, or he would have an accident?
No, he'd have an accident and kill himself. Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Okay.
No, Pedro, don't take the wheel. It will make you sad on the inside.
I still find it hilarious when we go to races now, and he's the lap record holder.
Yes.
Because I never remember him as particularly spectacular.
I did like a little bit of Pedro.
I thought he was the right guy when Sauber was saved from the scrap heap. Like, seeing him there, I was like, oh, that's like getting into a plane with a gentle, bearded pilot with a soothing voice. It's just like the right way to go.
That's the man who you'd want to crash into the Hudson on if he was going to do it again.
Exactly.
There's if you do get the chance with the Beyond the Grid podcast, there's a moment where Pedro talks about when he told Ron Dennis that he's not going to re-sign with McLaren as a test driver because he's going to go and drive for HRT, and he tells you what Ron Dennis's response was, it's glorious in all of its.
Anything that turns Ron Dennis purple is going to be a good story. Those were the best parts in Adrian Newey's autobiography, to be honest. The bits where he does stuff without realising and it just really fucks off Ron Dennis. That's the best.
I've got that in my book catalogue, book back catalogue even.
It's a really good book, actually. Newey's an interesting guy, and being that I'm so F1 centric, until I read that, I didn't really know he'd done a stint in IndyCar.
Oh, no.
Yeah, McLaren. I believe it was McLaren or March had to pull him back from America because he'd gone off to race engineer in IndyCar.
Cool.
Back in those halcyon days where he had hair.
Aww. Less aerodynamic though, so it had to go.
Yeah. He's always saving weight. Right, this has to be a good lap now, so I'm going to shut up.
Okay, I shall talk bollocks for the next minute and a half. Funny enough, actually, talking of random people who had been in IndyCar as opposed to F1, I was watching some old IndyCar broadcasts from the mid to late 90s and seeing Ted Kravitz as an early pit reporter and James Allen as early pit reporters on IndyCar before they came across to F1. Both you can absolutely tell where they got their craft from. Great fun to watch, and also seeing Ted Kravitz as a young person, but still wearing awkward shorts and stuff.
Was he fat like a teddy bear still?
Yep.
Oh.
It's like he was born in that shape and popped out the other side. It just kept going. Like one of those Russian dolls, except it's just a Russian Ted.
I'm still not happy with that lap. I could have gone a lot faster, but I ballsed up one of the chicanes.
Head of both Red Bulls.
Is it enough to get me through?
3 tenths off Norris and 11th. Leclerc would be the big one to improve. I think everyone else, you'll be in and around. Be close.
Well, it's too late to do anything about it now.
Don't.
If I get through, it'll be all right because I do have the pace. It's just I tried overdriving it a little bit through the the first sector, and then in the second sector it just went all over the place, and then sector 3 I kind of tried to claw it back a little bit, but it didn't work.
It's funny, this track I was never a massive fan of, but over the years I think as other tracks have come on and it stands out more. I was playing older F1 games, and because that's the older style of racetrack with all of these long rounded corners and stoppy start stuff, they've all died out now and now are in tiltdromes. This one now feels much more unique, and I've enjoyed it more over the years. I don't know, maybe
I think it's a cracking
fungus.
circuit. I really do. I really do think it's a cracking circuit.
Yeah. All right. Who's out on a lap?
Me.
Oh, well, it won't be Charles Leclerc going through. He's on an out lap apparently. So he's not actually got across the line in time, unless that's just being a bit foobar. Oh, Perez has gone up. Ooh, could be close. Okay, so those are the two. Yeah, the 2 Red Bulls have improved. Expected that. Oh, not 2 Red Bulls. Verstappen and Ricciardo. I've gone back a year. Okay.
I bet Daniel Ricciardo wishes he could do the same thing.
You're all right. You're in.
Oh shit! Well, I didn't need to put an extra 2 laps on my tyres then. And I've run out of fuel.
Oh no!
Oh, I improved by 5 tenths, and now I ran out of fuel at the last corner. What a tit!
Failing on the Failcast.
Oh,
We love it.
what a clown!
Boom. I was going to say something and now I can't remember what it was. It couldn't have been that good. Never mind. Lol.
Right. Hurry up and finish the session. Thing.
Yeah, this is such a strange bug when it does this. Oh, just enjoying... Who is that? Oh, it's Leclerc punting Kubica round the track.
Oh, I did make it... Oh, yeah. Yeah, I made it through. Okay, that's... Whew.
Doesn't matter by how much, you made it through.
Yeah, I usually save the humiliating myself till about lap 6 of the race this season. And then, apropos of fucking nothing, I'll just spin it into the barrier.
Yay!
That's how it works.
Boom.
This is actually my worst season since our first one.
Oh.
But I mean, I feel that is kind of a good thing in a way, because the game has gotten... I get the feeling that this takes a bit more wherewithal and a bit more awareness to drive than earlier versions of the game.
Well, yeah, because it's become more nuanced and more realistic, and there's more things to do over time. One thing I have noticed that I don't miss is when I've gone back to play previous games, it's not in my brain anymore to be sitting there pressing a battery charge boost button everywhere. So I'm so glad that is now just not a thing. But when you go back to previous games, I was what one was I doing? The one where they done Brands Hatch. I think it was 2013, and they did Brands Hatch and Horethen. God damn it, F coders, do that with this next iteration of the game, please. I want extra tracks. When you go back to that, it does feel much more arcadey and nuanced. Less nuanced and more you can just throw things around. And it's all just down to tyre grip and the way how the tyre technology has improved over the years in these games.
Yeah, I mean, my best season I think was 17. And that I only did well there because even the AI couldn't get the tyres to stop wearing away in 3 laps. And I've always been fairly okay on my tyres. But, you know, I kind of like that. I mean, I enjoy that every version of the game. The first time we boot it up together, I'm like, okay, is this a good year for me or a bad year? It must be very similar to what it feels like to go out in testing. But actually, if you go back to our episodes from 2014, I know exactly what you're talking about, or before 2014, because the amount of times I've been watching a few episodes back, the amount of times I'm like a fraction of a tenth of a second out of making it through to the next quali session, then I go, oh shit, I didn't use KERS. Like, that happened a lot back in the day, so yeah, the incompetence isn't new, but I am glad that the KERS is gone.
Indeed. Hey, John Holmes, welcome to the chat. He's agreeing with Codemasters putting new tracks in. What tracks would you like to see as an additional extra if there was additional tracks in 2020?
I'd like to see the Lenkebanen from Norway. It's like a motocross. I want to see rallycross. Sorry, I want to see F1 on a rallycross track. That's what I want to see. That or like the Mercedes-Benz ice track that they have for testing in Sweden. Nice. Because we know they can do it. I have seen Max Verstappen, and back in the day I think it was Buemi or Alguersuari driving a Red Bull car on studded tyres in the snow. And I was like, man, why don't we have this?
That is true. Oh, that's another interesting one. Codemasters should allow players to adjust the gear ratios on the classic cars. I didn't realise that wasn't a thing that we could do, but that probably shows how little I pay to set up attention on the classic cars. More than anything.
Well, I mean, I used to load setups on the classic cars back when the setups, like the early days, when the setups worked like on every car, basically the same, with the notable exception in the early games of the Mercedes because it had a longer wheelbase. and like the physics engine couldn't account for anything else, but it could account for the longer wheelbase. So the Mercedes was always like a very weird car. Back in the days when Schumacher came back just long enough to damage his legacy and and do all right at Monaco. Are you out on the track?
I am indeed.
Oh yes, you are.
Going,
I'm waiting for all you fools and plebeians to put down the rubber, and then I can come when the track's a bit nicer. I think I've earned it through my years of service.
Yeah, agreed.
Now, obviously, it's not just F1 who's postponed proceedings, but also Formula E is also pausing. But they're not doing the same thing with the regulations, as far as I know. And actually, the Gen 2 Evo cars are still coming if they haven't already. So it's interesting to see them take different approaches, but I suppose Formula E is still monumentally cheap compared to Formula 1, which is why the grid is so healthy.
Yeah, it was also interesting that they just block counselled for a couple of months as well to give no specific, will they, won't they. It was very clear cut for them, I guess, because they're in city centres, and so that's going to be where big populi are. It is monumentally cheap. I'm a bit confused as to what's going on with their next load of cars, though, because I saw some pictures on it, and I have to say I didn't like the look of it initially, but I know that I'm in the minority, so I shall.
Well, if it allows it to maintain the same quality or better of racing, then I don't really care. I mean, a good-looking car is nice, but ultimately I just want cars that can follow each other and so on, and Formula E's been very good with that so far. And, that's part of the reason, that's one argument, I think, against postponing the new F1 regulations, that the new cars were supposed to be far better in dirty air. And I saw a great graphic, actually, doing the rounds on Instagram and so on, of F1 cars from different eras going through the wind tunnel and showing how the vortices form off the back of the car.
Okay.
And it's interesting that actually the cars that were best for following each other were the cigar-shaped cars of like the 50s and 60s.
I suppose
before wings.
I was going to say, I suppose because they're so narrow like bullets that they would not really cut such a wide chunk through the air. Well,
also, it's the fact the way you generate downforce naturally disrupts the airflow over the car behind. It's almost like you're taking the energy out of the air, which you're not. You're putting energy into the air in exchange for boring science stuff. But the point is that there's sort of an advantage to your performance, but a detriment to the racing by having wings on the cars. And this time, very cleverly, I'm going to do my best to not run out of fuel. I think that's the key here to success. To make it round quickly and not run out of fuel.
Yeet. Happy with that.
I just saw you went pole, you cheeky rapscallion. There's no place on this show for success. I don't know where you get off.
I know. It's alright, I'll have another AI smash me into the barriers this time.
That was a murder. Chat was right about that. That was a murder. Cold-blooded.
Ew. Manor House would like to see Knock Hill in the game. Yes. I'm sure it was Knock Hill that I was playing the other day on Project Cars 2. That is the one with the chicanes with all of the bouncing for BTCC, isn't it? Knock Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I couldn't help but want to straight line it, and it's proper sends you up in the air, and I was flying over it, and I was landing on top of other cars. It was like I'd played Wreckfest without actually loading it up. It was great. I'd like to throw in Norris Ring just for lols, for blue flags.
Imola.
Oh yeah.
I
Pre
miss
94, post 94.
Pre. Because it's not dangerous in a video game. Like they could also bring back, the murderous version of the Nürburgring.
Yeah,
that's one advantage esports definitely has over real sports, is that you can drive the most insane versions of the very dangerous tracks of history.
Yeah,
and it's no big deal. I still think there should be a drunk esports series. Like, what better advertisement is there for why you shouldn't drink and drive than by watching people drink and drive?
Yeah, for each, if you've got like positions 1 to 20 on the grid, 20th place only takes 1 shot, 19th 2. It just keeps going and going until pole position literally can't pick up the wheel. It just slumps down at turn 1.
I mean, the only problem is you and I couldn't enter because, as we have continually shown in this podcast, we usually get pole in the win if one of us is drunk.
That is very, very true. You're in a pole already. Crumbs. I didn't even spot that. Ooh, less than a 10th. Sneaky. Well done.
Sorry, I am a crafty one.
You are. You're also 9th in the speed trap, which makes me think that we have gone for a slightly different setup to the AI, which is good.
Where are you in the speed trap?
It doesn't show yourself, it only shows other people, which really pisses me off. I wonder if I can work it out.
Spot the number.
To be fair, I might be 10th.
Well, to be honest, this is the kind of circuit that normally I'm quite good at. And I've won here before. I didn't win here last year because I kept talking about how I always win here.
Mm-hmm.
And the rules of the universe targeting me specifically make quite clear that any time I humble brag, then I must immediately embarrass myself. My favourite is still at Singapore in 2015, where I was talking about how fast my in-lap was, and then I crashed into the separator between the track and the pit lane. What's your favourite circuit to drive, Simon? A question from the chat.
Oh.
Ages is Interlagos, and I have to say I can get behind that. Interlagos is a lot of fun.
So I would say Interlagos or what is now the Red Bull Ring. There's just such a flow with those two circuits. And actually, if I think about them, they're quite similar in their design. I think I like something where corners flow one into another and you get into a rhythm of it. And for me, those two circuits are the ones that I've got the most rhythm on. And I think with Interlagos, going back to me as a kid, Brazil used to be the season opener, and so we used to spend a shit ton of time on that specific circuit across games for years and years and years and years. So those two for me. How about yourself?
It's actually a really tough question because there's a handful of names that come to mind. I'm inclined to agree with both of you on one thing, Interlagos and, in your case, Simon, the Red Bull Ring. I love both those circuits. But what immediately leapt to mind for me was either Monza or Silverstone.
Ooh.
Because I really enjoy both of those, particularly Monza.
Yeah, Mano's put in Montreal. Don't know why, just always liked it. I agree with that. Again, that's another circuit with a stop-start fast flow to it, so you get into it's really rhythmic. I'm going to 2-stop.
You swine! I'm doing the same thing.
6 and 20, it reckons for me, but
6 and 21.
Okay.
But I can definitely go to 7. I can definitely go to or 5.
Should we do a whoever's in front gets to pit on lap 6?
Yeah, alright. Let's bring some team orders into this. This is going to end so badly. And also, like, if this is your first time watching the podcast, because statistically it might be, because
there's quite a few people in actually.
Yeah, and we're grateful for all of you.
Hey, Rhino.
This podcast goes to bollocks every time we actually have to race each other.
We normally smash into each other, or there's just like a minute or two of us going, ah! And then we resume talking normal motorsport shit afterwards. So,
oh, well, let's get it over with, shall we?
My crotch is sweaty.
Who misses? I was a little slow coming off the clutch there, and that's given everyone but me a better start.
I'm sticking to the inside.
Stop touching me!
Oh my Christ.
You bastard.
Is that that must have been Perez.
Yeah, Perez punted me round.
Wank bucket.
Specifically after I said to him, don't touch me. Box this lap.
Okay. That's answered my next question.
Hard tyres. The car will not turn.
Oh, dude. It looked very crowded.
It was, I think actually it was about 2 versions ago that this game got it right with the aggression level of the AI.
Mm-hmm. And
since then, they're a little too touchy. And they seem to have a very clear lack of awareness regarding particularly the player's car. They will just turn into you. And what I'm finding very unrealistic is that Perez is able to belt it round and run off into the sunset, and I can't get the car to turn.
Boo.
But the good news is it puts me into some clean air, and maybe I can do a recovery drive.
Well, I don't seem to have a ton of pace, and everyone's starting to queue up behind me, so maybe I can become an accidental cockblock for them all.
Oh, that sounds exciting.
Which, to be fair, should be my future name on any dating app from where it's coming through.
The cockblock. What I was going to say as well is I actually quite enjoyed Spa. I used to hate Spa. I mean, I love watching the race, but in this game I was always terrible at Spa. Do you remember? Mm-hmm. One year in qualifying, we were so baffled as to why I was so slow that you followed me round on a lap to spot me.
Yeah.
And neither of us could figure out where I was losing all the time, but I was. Now I'm a bit older and wiser, and we know about all the desync issues that early Cody's games used to have.
Yeah.
Particularly on PC, I do wonder if it was that. But then, sort of 2-3 years ago, it just sort of my brain clicked into place, and I could drive Spa. And since then, I actually quite enjoy that as well, because it's a track that offers quite a lot of variation, but I can still get into some form of rhythm on it. And of course, it's got some of the classic corners of Formula 1.
Yeah. Outside of F1 games, the other track that I absolutely loved driving on in R Factor was the Istanbul Ring. Or Istanbul Park, I think it's actually called, sorry. The Turkish Grand Prix.
You did used to like Turkish Grand Prix, didn't you? I hated that track.
I loved that track. There was such a great flow to it, and I don't know why, but every racing league that I used to take part in, that used to be the track where there was so many crashes, and I used to be able to go around and pick up points like 3 laps down and be like, la la la. And it's also the scene of one of my most competitive sim racing experiences as well, where I was only ever lapped once, which was quite a miracle for me on a full distance race. You
do actually tend to form a bond with a track that you have a breakthrough race on, don't you?
Yes, yeah. It's funny enough, actually, Interlagos was the first race that I scored points on in my sim racing, if you want to call it that, career over in FSR. So maybe that's also another reason why I like it. Back when everyone drove on wheels and I turned up playing with the keyboard.
Yeah.
Jack Nicholls commentating on me, going, It's looking a little bit angular with his steering. It's like because I'm using up, down, left, right arrows, Jack.
But you didn't let it hold you back, and that's why you are the inspiration you are today.
Exactly. God.
I never actually drove. I never had a sim racing career. I was always a manager.
Yeah.
Because I knew I couldn't do it, and I'm the kind of person who, like, I spend all my time embarrassing myself, so I really don't feel the need to do that in a public arena that often, because I sort of get my fill day to day. And also, like, when I first started running my team, that's how you and I met, right?
Yeah.
When I first started running my sim racing team back in the day, and picked up the drivers, and they would sort of ping me on, back in those days, MSN Messenger. Rip in peace. And they give me like feedback on, because particularly GPVWC could let you develop the car, which I always liked. Mm-hmm. So they'd like complain about the car or whatever because we were a rookie team and the car was crap. But I saw how many hours they were putting in, and I was thinking, I just don't have that sort of attention span. I'm never going to be able to compete in any way that won't result in me embarrassing myself, because I can't do 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
But I did enjoy management, and I actually brought my team back for one season in GPVWC last year. But then I got sick, and I wasn't able to stay involved really. So I decided it probably was best not to carry on this year. But it's a shame because I do miss it. I think it's a really fun community to be part of, actually. Mm-hmm. And it's getting a little more exclusive now. Like now it's really hard to get into the GPVWC Super League or the top tier of FSR, and I had a team in the Super League. I won a race in the Super League.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Quite a lot of sim racing leagues kind of go through as we are old fogies in the sim racing world. You see it over the course of several years. Lots of leagues basically have to make up their mind if they're going to be an accessible to all, or they're going to chase the elitism of it all. And there's no necessarily right or wrong. It's just knowing where you fit in the community and who you want to then attract as a result of it. And GPV has basically shifted from one end of the spectrum to the other. And I wish Will, who runs it, all the best. I just knew that wasn't for me, trundling around qualifying 3.5 seconds off the post down in. So I used to race in the bottom career run with my team, Backmarker Brigade, and Backmarker by name and by nature. But it was 40 cars would start that race, and I'd normally qualify about 34th. So that would show you how backmarkery I was. But it would always be that I'd give out my drive, and I know you was very similar. It was around people who not necessarily had the fastest pace, but it would be the people who would turn up every race, enjoy themselves, be part of the community, and show themselves, essentially. But that then has slid over the years to becoming, now we want the fastest people, we're chasing the esports money, as esports as a thing has become more prominent, more money's been pumped in, awareness becomes out, and sim racing, I think this year will have easily its biggest audience, easily its most prevalent year and most important year, because it will, how it transitions itself to becoming a sport in its own right, I think will be like a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a weird time for a few years, to be honest. I mean, the thing that that I definitely noticed, aside from the fact that I haven't caught anybody up in the pit stops.
We've only just pitted.
Yeah, I know, but still. Is that when I was running a team last year, I was fortunate enough, I actually managed to identify some good drivers, and I got to know the guy who ran the academy team. and he also spent a lot of time watching the testing sessions and so on, and he would like nudge me with tips, like this guy's really good and he doesn't have a ride.
Yeah. I know who you're talking about.
But
Menno.
Yeah, but all of my signings, they were with me for like a race, maybe 2 races, and then one of the big teams were like, "Oh, he's faster than who I've got now," and they'd fire whoever they had and just take my driver.
Yep.
And like because I don't have time to get to know them personally very well, I don't know how seriously they take their quote-unquote career. Mm-hmm. So I felt like, well, I can't force you to stay. Like, if you want to, jump up to a faster team, then, you do it. But it got to the point where I couldn't feel the team, because every time I hired a driver, a race later, he was gone.
Yeah. And then you're having to do the call-out in the forum going, anyone want to race at the last minute? And then it doesn't feel like you're a standard team. The other thing as well is that some of the bigger teams then have started to sign sponsorship deals, and so they then try and entice people and going like £10 a race, that kind of stuff, which isn't sustainable unless you are like Team Redline and people like that, and they're offering way more money. So it's funny how the same issues in real world racing have started to creep into sim racing. Almost to like try and self-sabotage itself over time. So I always knew with me that my team and me racing and the leagues that I'll be bringing in later on this year, so if anyone is racing, has a PC and wants to get in touch with sim racing, there will be something Failcasty related coming in the future alongside our Failcast F1 management thing that you started off, Ben.
Yep.
When the season obviously gets going.
League.
Ah, shit.
Have you crashed?
Yes.
Stop dying. Stop it.
That was unfortunate. Never mind. Back
Perez has managed to pit and get out ahead of me, and I resent him with an intense and fiery passion. It's like we're in a Spanish soap opera.
Boo! Oh, sorry, I didn't spot you in the chat there, Rhino. I'll get to that message when I'm on a straight. One of the most interesting things in sim racing was when I managed to get a World Championship Formula Sim Racing license, because one of the teams called Rothmans Racing spot the problem why they couldn't then continue on with their name of so they sold their license and I bought it. And this was when Formula Sim Racing basically was, you pay €1,000 and we all basically will profit from all revenue that comes in forever. And it was kind of like an ideal system that you would buy into. And when I was offered the chance, I thought, oh, this could be a really good long-term investment. Let's go for it. Rightly or wrongly. And then once I was in, there's like, you can't call your team back Marker Brigade. This is a professional world. And I was like, yes, but who has the biggest social media following? Who has this? Who has that? So it was really interesting to kind of see all of the politics that went on behind running a sim racing league. And then when I used to be an admin for GPVWC, same issues, just politics all the way through.
I always found it very ridiculous how the politics crept in. Like in FSR, actually.
Yeah.
I used to get messages maybe once a week from, I don't know if they're still around actually, Precision Motorsports.
Yeah, that's about.
Who were trying to buy up my team entries and take over the teams.
Yeah.
And it's like, but why? And he's like, yeah, but you can come and work for us. I was like, it's not a job. I don't want to work for you.
Yeah. We've got private servers that you can be on at any time you want when we tell you for our private tests.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I think that's probably why we first started chatting to each other, was that we were probably two of the few teams that used to not get involved into the hierarchical structure of that league. with A teams, B teams, C teams, and the stealings of drivers, so that we would actually kind of help each other out with set up help and support and just camaraderie.
Yeah, well, I mean, you had to, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it's like, you know, a dominant season every season for the same 3 people.
Yep. Where funnily has that happened, I wonder?
Yeah, I wonder why that feels so familiar.
Thonking emoji.
I tell you what we could do for the next stretch here is I'm curious as to your thoughts. Obviously, it didn't happen, the Australian Grand Prix. But what do you think would have happened had it happened?
A predictathon.
Yeah, because honestly, like, I don't really know for sure, particularly when it comes to the midfield, if I could make a reasonable prediction. And by the same measure, I don't even really know if I'm not that confident in picking a winner.
I still think Mercedes would have walked it. Maybe not by as much as previous years. There's a massive train up ahead. I tell you what, we're only a few seconds away from catching about 10 people, so keep going. I think Mercedes would have won. I think Racing Point would have been top 6 on the grid, with Perez, not with Stroll. I think it would have gone Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari / Racing Point side by side. Then just a clusterfuck of everyone else. And that's really what... just same as you. I'm desperate to see how that midfield plays out. And I think if the team that will hurt the most from all of this shutdown is Racing Point.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Because, I mean, the team I'm actually finding hardest to place is AlphaTauri.
Yes.
Because I didn't see anything that really pointed one way or the other over the testing period. I do rate their drivers. And I don't know, the fact they're basically running last year's Red Bull could be good or bad. It's very hard to say. And also, like Racing Point, you know, my gut says, yeah, they would have been top 6. But at the same time, maybe not, right? I mean, what about that time Sauber basically ran a kit car Ferrari and couldn't get it to work? I mean, it's one thing building it and getting, you know, good times in testing, but, you know, back in 2010, 2011, there were days that Sauber were fastest in testing.
Yeah.
So I don't really know whether there's much to be read into, and whether it's all smoke and mirrors, and that's part of why I was looking so much forward to Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not entirely convinced one way or the other about the competitiveness of pretty much anybody except Mercedes. Because, you know, when I think about the potential that's in the AlphaTauri or the Racing Point, I start thinking, what's this going to mean for McLaren?
Yep, absolutely. Because I think McLaren are going to really have struggle on their hands to be fourth this year in the constructors if it continues on as we plan. I think they're going to be in a heap of doo-doo trying to stay there, because their car was there or thereabouts, but it wasn't shining particularly anywhere. Now, I don't know how much of a glory run a lot of Racing Point's long pace would have been, but yellow flag. Who's out? Oh, there's a Racing Point. Oh, it's Stroll. Conked out on the start-finish straight.
Commentator's curse.
Lol. Oh, Leclerc, stop it.
What tyres are you on?
Mediums.
Yeah, I thought you were.
Everyone else is on hards around me, though.
The hards are very, very, very slow. That's what I'm learning.
Yes.
Like, ridiculously slow.
Yeah. Russell's holding everyone up on mediums just in front of me, so they're taking a while to get round him, which is helping me out no end.
You guys have just totally disappeared. And I can't get past Sergio Perez. We've now caught up to Carlos Sainz, and you know how it is in this game. It's hard enough to overtake one car without them trying to kill you. Trying to overtake two at the same time is very, very difficult.
Oh, right, Russell was the one that put me in the pit lane wall last time round, so I've just got round him and I'm in 10. So, no, you're still closing down this gang.
I've just forced my way through. I mean, really forced my way through.
Good man. Do we?
I just thought I can't afford. Well, halfway through the race nearly, I can't afford to lose any more time now, at all.
No, and we're gonna have to pass all these again if we're two stopping.
Be gone, Satan.
Carlos Satan.
No, Perez.
Oh, Satan Perez.
Yeah, it was like you punt me round again, and that's it. I'm coming to Max Verstappen you in the pits. I'll push you off a weighing scale and then call you a pussy in front of the world's media.
Meow.
Battery charge is low. If we turn down the ERS deployment, we can harvest more energy.
And suddenly my confidence is back, and now I can actually drive the car.
Yes.
I was also running with 2 laps more fuel than I needed, so I'm burning some of that off.
Good man. Good man.
The only problem now is I have to pass one Mr. Romain Grosjean. And video game Romain Grosjean is equally as incompetent as real life Romain Grosjean. A fact that is not lost on our good friend Age, who has spoken my mind in the chat.
I wonder actually, so if cars are going to continue on for 2020 into 2021, how much... how many drivers I think will stay on as a result, or will do you think?
You've raised a really interesting point there, because I don't know how F1 drivers' contracts are structured. Is it by year or is it by number of races?
I'd have thought it would have been by year, but if say like there's still some talk about maybe lopsiding, so that the 2020 season might be a 2020-21 season, that would ruin driver contracts. Yeah,
for sure.
If it was races or years, it would bugger it up regardless. So yeah, there's quite a few interesting little quirkies.
I am about to get stuck in a buttload of traffic. You've got past them all, right? And Russell?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm trying to chase down Bottas and I think it's Verstappen.
Right, I have the doors. No, I won't, Jeff. No, I will not. Yeah, eat it, Grosjean. Eat a dick.
That's not what he's going to serve up on his menu.
Bonsoir, mon ami. It's always a failcast, Age. It's always a failcast. Even when we win, it's a failcast.
This is true. Ugh.
I forget that the AI break a lot earlier than I do, and I have to keep like swerving off into space to stop myself taking my front wing off on the back of the gearbox.
I am taking some track liberties where my tyres are starting to proper fall off now. Ooh, everyone's in the pits.
Oh, thank Christ.
I wonder if they're the medium tyre stops or the hard, because we are halfway. Oh, it's lots of people switching onto hards.
medium.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't gain a lot out of everyone pitting.
No, they've just come out just in front of you all. But they're all on mediums, and we know how slow they are. Practically Chanok Nisani. Boop boop.
Peace be upon him.
In something still F1 related, can I just say thank you to all of the different F1 groups that I've discovered on different teams over the last few months that I never knew existed until really recently. Like all the obscure teams seem to now have Facebook groups with old mechanics in posting loads and loads of pictures. So I know we found each other in the LaRousse F1 one.
We did, and Pacific.
Yep. Pacific have got theirs. I'm in the Osella one because I love that team. There's also now I've found one that's dedicated only to cars that did not qualify or did not pre-qualify.
Yeah, there was a great shot of a Real today, and it made me think of you.
Ah, you guys!
I thought I know a man who would fail to pre-qualify.
Touched my very soul. But what's also been really interesting with that is that mechanics are then also posting underneath some stories as to why cars didn't qualify that specific time, and it made
pretty
me
cool.
It made me think of a couple of things as to like weird situations. So one that I stuck in my head essentially was in 2001, Tarso Marquez in the Minardi. It always kind of surprised me as to how far he was off from Alonso, because when you think in 1996 and 1997, actually he was competitive and on the pace with everyone else, but he was well off in 2001. And what the mechanic, there was a mechanic in the chat basically underneath, and it was like he missed qualifying in, I think it was Spain or Imola, one of the two, by a couple of attempts, and it was basically they had run out of actual parts and had had to fit in broken ones and just send him out to go, there you go, try your best, and so they were basically like, yeah, so they was like he was losing about 1.5 seconds a lap, so he would never have had it. And then someone went into great detail basically about how the 2001 Minardi, they only had enough money in parts and cash to run Alonso's car, and so it never would have mattered who was in the second one. It was all sounding very Perry McCarthy basically, but it was in really excruciating detail as to why things had gone wrong. And then someone was doing the same with Ricardo Rosset at Tyrrell in 1998. Less about Monaco, but he didn't qualify somewhere else, and they were basically putting down that they only had like a gearbox that had gone well past its sell-by date and was sticky, so they stuck it in that car because that was all that they had left, and they didn't really like him anyway. And I was like,
they hated him, didn't they?
Yeah, tosser. Yeah.
I tried to make a move there on Daniel Ricciardo and realised at the last minute it was the worst possible place to try and make the move. Our chance at points rests solely with you, I think. How are my tyres? Oh, they're okay so far.
Was I supposed to pit?
Professional.
Yeah, I was. Never mind. All box next lap. So Verstappen's going to try and go to the end on his... I was there. I was racing in ahead of him. Damn it.
That was a very stupid thing I just did, but fortunately I didn't kill anybody or myself.
Hey.
I'm getting very frustrated behind all this traffic.
I done loads of cheeky manoeuvres into the chicane.
I might have to start taking a leaf out of your book, because I'm a lot faster than them, and I'm having to brake super early to avoid, because they move to block you off. And I know I'll just bin my own car and they'll drive off completely unscathed.
But essentially they were queuing round the chicane. Maybe it was because Russell was going extra slow at that point, and I was able to take advantage. But did you have a Bottas appear anywhere near you, by the way?
No.
Okay.
I have not seen him.
Okay, we can take you this lap.
Right, here's a thought. I might come in and switch to a softer compound of tyre because I'm just losing a buttload of time. And these tyres are very, very, very slow. And I wasn't going to get points anyway. Points were a pipe dream. Bottas, P16.
The car in front by a second per lap.
Okay.
We can't take you right now. Pit in.
Wow, Russell is slow.
I wonder if he's damaged after our little contretemps.
Well, he has to be damaged in some way to do what he did to you last week.
Oh, it was him again! Ah! Georgie.
Understood. Stopping this lap.
Right, let's see if these tyres are actually any faster.
We'll be doing one more stop today. One stop left in our strategy.
I'm going to build up my ERS charge as well for when I inevitably catch up to the traffic ahead. Well, it must be a bit faster because I've just got a purple sector too, so...
Complete. Go now.
Oh, thank God Grosjean's in the pits.
After these tyres now, we want to finish
I don't have to dice with death yet again today.
Okay, I'm off and away. This is going to end up with one of those races where I think everyone meets at the end.
Yeah, it's looking that way, isn't it?
Which I quite liked. I was watching some stuff on the Variety Network on YouTube, and they were showing some old races from 2004, 2005 era, where it was no tyre changes, and they hadn't quite got used to it all because everyone's like saving their tyres, and they're like, I'm not sure. Mike Brand was going, I'm not sure if I like this or not, all the way through the whole race until like it gets to the end, where people would start getting together.
I didn't like it.
Same.
I didn't, and even though it's super dangerous, I kind of miss refueling as well. Because the one thing I love about playing Grand Prix World is the way that you can run your cars lighter and faster if you want to.
Yeah.
Because that was always the great leveler as well, right? Between the teams that had some pace built into the car and those that needed to like make some early moves and try and get through the slower cars early. It also made for a bit more overtaking without it being quite as artificial as having the push to overtake button.
Yeah.
Which ironically in this game doesn't really work.
Oh, sirens.
It was only a matter of time. They will find me one day, but let me tell you this, I will not go back to jail. Actually, they may come for me one day. So I learned something a little bit disconcerting the other day.
Ooh.
Now, so far, I haven't met the threshold, but there are some fairly draconian laws here in Germany. What a surprise, the bureaucracy capital of the world. And if you have a regularly scheduled live broadcast, which you and I do,
Yeah.
that either live or over the course of the catalogue gains 500 or more unique views, you are considered a public broadcaster.
What?
Yes, and it means 1, you need a license, and 2, you cannot swear before 9 p.m.
No.
So it's lucky that we aren't actually successful and it is a failcast, because otherwise I'd be out like a few grand and wouldn't be allowed to swear. Fuck you, Grosjean.
That's really bad.
Isn't that really stupid? It's because the laws were created, before really the internet had taken off, and I learnt about this through. Ah, shit! I just lost the car.
Was that your yellow flag?
Yeah. There's a streamer here called Dragonlord or Dragonlord, and it's yeah, you're right, Age. I need to slow down in that corner. I got overconfident. I got cocky, and he doxed himself. You know the sort of person who doesn't understand why they're being mocked so remorselessly, and then they just sort of unintentionally exacerbate the problem.
Yep.
By reacting exactly in the way the people bullying them want to react. Well, he's one of those, and anyway, he announced his address on a stream so people could come and fight him. And since then, it's become it's called the Pilgrimage, and basically you go to his house and stand outside, you sing, maybe you sing happy birthday to him on his birthday, you bring him gifts, and then he just goes completely fucking mental, to the point that I saw a video of him breaking his own windows in rage. That, of course, only exacerbates the problem further. So there's some great footage, actually, of a Russian and a Turkish news broadcast about a mass shooter, where the people who tease him had called up and identified him as the shooter. And the rolling news coverage is like as if he's the shooter. Anyway, these trolls, they knew about this law and reported him to the relevant Bundesministerium, and then very kindly applied for a license on his behalf, and then filled it out like a complete buffoon. So his license was rejected, and now he can't stream anymore, or if he does, he has to cap it at 500 viewers. Seems a little stepping over the line into being genuinely mean. But at the same time, he did kind of bring it on himself. But I thought, surely that can't be right. And then I checked, and no, it's right. So if at any point, not that it's very likely, we become successful, then either we have to go back to the recorded format so I can swear, because apparently then it doesn't matter. Oh my god, I've crashed. There's the failcast for you, Age.
Safety car?
Oh, well, at least now you've got a chance at points. I can't believe that. I deliberately slowed so I wouldn't lose the car at that corner, and I slowed so much that the downforce went away from the car. And it just rotates into what I'm having the worst season of all time.
Dude.
Oh well. Never mind. Nico Hulkenberg on course for a podium. Perhaps you can ruin his day, though, now I've enabled the field to bunch up.
That is true. That was going quite... I don't know if this will work for me. It depends on how many laps it stays out. If it's the free, then this might work okay. But otherwise, I'm not sure if it will help or not. Anyway, yeah. Poor you. Not been your year.
It really hasn't.
You talking about the weird laws, so that's that weird like cut-off period of stuff is essentially why I couldn't afford to fund my own radio station either. Oh god, I nearly binned it on the safety car. Christ.
You're right there, Roman.
So yeah.
It was Ericsson, wasn't it? I saw him.
Someone get me a Camembert croissant. So with radio broadcasting, you're limited to only being able to broadcast in your own country. You have to pay your license twice because you have to pay for performance royalties as well as songwriter royalties. Then you also have to pay depending on how many listening hours there are, and you're capped at unique listeners at one time. So it's like they try and sandwich you into all of these weird and wonderful things. But essentially, if you get successful, then you go up to the next tier of professional broadcasting. So you can pay like a couple of £100, which is what I've done to kind of try it all out and see what happens. Then it like leapfrogs into the thousands immediately. And if you've not got anyone that like will support you out, if people have come along and like listened to you in the background and it's really like low numbers, it's about like having the equivalent of about 5 people listen to you for a couple of hours a day, then it leaps from a couple of £100 to £1,000 per license per country. And I was like, time to get out.
Yeah. I mean,
similar.
that's the thing. These laws really need to be reworked because the way media happens now is not the same. And to be honest, I'd prefer not to go back to the recorded format because,
Agree.
I mean, and the game isn't even tailored for that now because we can't even restart races now, thanks to Codemasters, because it's considered a league event. But yeah, I mean, I was astonished by that, to be honest. And, you know, there are plenty of F1 podcasts that get well more than 500 viewers. But then something occurred to me that if I stop streaming it from my point of view and we go back to the old format where people had to watch it on board with you, then I could get around the law. Because technically then we'd be broadcasting from the UK.
God, what?
And I could swear all I want. Fuckity fuck.
Rated F for fuckery.
Exactly. Yeah, I have to get my head back in the game this season. I have crashed so many times, and I've always been so good. Like my finish rate, I've been putting together the statistics for our 10 years together, right?
Yeah.
And my finish rate is really, really good until this year. I even had a good, retaining my front wing rate until this year. It's really bad. I mean, we had a bad start to the season last year, because if you remember, we had 3 or 4 double DNFs in the first 4 rounds. But that was abnormal as well. And this year, I don't know. I'm just binning it left, right and centre. Age is saying, over there in the Netherlands, one farmer applied for an airfield permit so he could fly drones at his farm without needing to ask permission. That's the world we live in now. Like, I have a drone, and...
Do you? Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I do my best. Like, I don't like people watching what I'm doing and paying attention to me, right? And I don't want to piss people off, so I only fly my drone when I travel, and I like to travel, like, out into the middle of nowhere. So, I'll get up at like 5, 6 in the morning and I'll go and view these nature spots before anyone else is there. And in an ideal world, no one ever sees me fly my drone. That's what I aim for, right? But now I've got a license with the Civil Aviation Authority, so I'm a registered drone pilot. I have insurance, global insurance, and I have 2 registration plates stuck to it for 2 different countries. And if I want to fly it, like I'm planning to travel outside Europe at some point, and it depending on which country I go to, like if I go to Canada, which I've always wanted to do, if I want to fly my drone like in a forest to get some cool photos for my photo album, it goes from you have to have a license to basically you have to become a pilot, like you have to take a class and you have to learn about wind speed and all this kind of stuff, and it's like, for fuck's sake, like obviously that's important for people who are flying like 5 to 10 kilo hunks of metal around, but this is a tiny plastic thing that I already fly in a way that I can't possibly injure people. I mean, like, I go out of my way to make sure no one's even as much as annoyed, but maybe everyone else isn't so considerate as me.
Well, I remember loads of airports shutting down because people kept flying drones outside airport
Can you take over for a minute? Because someone's rang my doorbell. Hold on.
Yeah, no problem. In the UK, people keep flying air drones next to airports and it shuts down bases. I think they're probably trying to look at doing saucy. Let's try the
Sorry about that. The DHL man has no decorum at all.
Scoreston. Glad you're getting deliveries still. I was really surprised that my PC arrived, to be honest.
It's a very important one as well. It's vital I have it because it is a large crate of lager. That's why I freaked out. I was like, I'm prepared to interrupt a live broadcast for this.
Good man.
You are in P6.
I am indeed.
Phenomenals. You're going to extend your lead. Now the question is, if I do the bulk of the talking bollocks now, can you actually even improve upon this?
I think so.
And actually, for once, we're getting the TV style cameras, so it's actually like watching a competent broadcast. Do you know, I was thinking, like, if we ever do get an audience back to the levels we used to have, we should get an intern that we can bully who just does the live stream from a third machine in spectator mode.
Yeah. That'd be interesting, because sometimes if we've already had to pit for front wings, there'll be a few laps where we've not got anything to go on with.
Well, you guys seem to be breaking away from Leclerc. Ooh!
I've been doing the outside of that corner.
I'll be honest with you, I could tell already that was never going to happen. Oh, beer delivery! Thank you, Jeeves. Right. Do you know, it's even cold. It's actually cold. What an age we live in. We used to be able to get KFC delivered to my apartment.
Oh, wow.
But then they stopped. And I don't know why, and it upsets me. And Pizza Hut deliver in the city, but not to my zip code.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. I mean, basically what I'm trying to say is that Bono needs to organise an Aid concert for me, because I don't think anybody's ever been as oppressed as I am. I try not to let it make me come resentful, though. Nico Hulkenberg is in second place. What alternate reality is this? You have to finish in front of K-Mag, Simon. Like, you just have to.
Do not worry.
Oh, brave. Someone's brought a yellow flag out.
That's why I had to stop, otherwise I'd have had it. And again, there's another one. Right, are we green again?
No. But it's not an incident, it's someone going slow, and it looks like Grosjean. Yeah, it's Grosjean.
Kimi out as
Oh,
well.
Raikkonen's out. Go on, have the bastard. There you go. Good boy.
Bit cheeky on the old get out, but fuck it.
We have 2 laps of fuel remaining.
So, this is usually the point in the show where we plug our channels and ask what we're doing next week. I'm going to let you race and people enjoy the exciting action, while I talk about what I'm going to be doing. I'm aiming to have at least one video a day out at the moment to help with the severe boredom coming through the corona crisis. I actually think I've watched everything on the internet now. I mean, all the things. Although what I found out is ITV's excellent series Wire in the Blood, which is super good, is on YouTube in really watchable quality.
Oh, cool.
Season 4 onwards. Seasons before had a weird woman in that I never grew to like, but season 4, 5 and 6, really, really good. So I've been watching that and working from home and then making Grand Prix World videos. So the Tool Time playthrough, there's already been an episode today, there might be another one later. F1 Manager I'm carrying on with for the duration, and you're on the podium. Well done indeed. Hell of an effort. Yeah, F1 Manager. I don't know how long that's going to last, simply because it's the most annoying game in the world. And I'm still playing Crusader Kings 2, but as is always the way, the subscribers on my channel, they fall into two very distinct camps. And I'm thinking I might need a second channel. Not that I've got like a huge audience or anything, it's just that they have wildly different interests. And there's like the people who come for Grand Prix World, and then there's the people who come because I play historical grand strategy games as Norway. So like my biggest demographic is Norwegians, but none of them watch Grand Prix World. It's really bizarre. Thank you for noticing, Age. I have got it down to sort of 15-20 minutes per episode. It's a quite good formula, actually. I've been doing it so many years that you just sort of like blitz it out without even thinking, and it sort of organically finishes 15-20 minutes. And I think it's kind of good, after work, being respectful of people's time. Ooh, well done, sir. Bravo.
Got sweaty mitts.
That's delightful. I'll add that to our quotes on IMDb. What's going on for you this week? What are you doing through the crowd? You've got a new PC and you haven't even told us about it. What kind of specs have you got? What are you doing with it?
Oh, so most expensive thing I've ever bought in my life. Just a quick shout out in the chat. Mugello is an amazing track, Rhino. I agree. I would like to see that. And thank you, Paddy, for watching as well. Gave us a good afternoon. PC is highly spec'd. I don't know the specs off the top of my head. All I know is that when I arrived, it came in a box that couldn't actually get up my stairs properly, and the DPD driver was just like, "If that's a PC company, innit?" And I was like, "Yes." He was like, "It's like a piece of furniture." And then when I got it out, I took a photo of it, and I was like, "Meet my new chair," because it's huge, and I can't actually fit it in my. I've got one of those office desks where the PC slots in. It can't fit in. It's too chonky, so I'm gonna have to buy some furniture. But yeah, this week, for the rest of the weekend, essentially, I'm setting up my PC so that I can, and I'll be doing some test streams. It was also my birthday earlier on this week. I'm going to be going and getting some alcohol if there's some still left out there in the shops. And essentially, I'll be doing a test stream on my PC, playing weird and wonderful games, getting heavily drunk later on this evening through into tomorrow. So if anyone wants to see me play games badly and get slowly pissed, you're welcome to join. And then throughout the rest of the week, I'll be catching up on videos of games that I was sent to review. That I just haven't had the chance to actually make structured, proper reviews for. And that will be me for the week ahead.
Wonderful. Well, thank you to everyone who joined for the live broadcast, and anyone who's watching back on replay. I know from my stats we tend to get a lot of replay viewers, so we appreciate each and every one of you. It's very cool that you spend some of your time hanging out with us, and we do appreciate it. And I hope you're enjoying our 10th and crashiest ever season. Simon and I will see you in 2 weeks' time.
We will indeed. Go and enjoy the F1 rerun of the Brazilian Grand Prix, and maybe catch you in the chat and the race later on. Take care all. Bye.
Bye. Love you. Bye.
I love that Grosjean still hasn't scored. And Kubica has.